The descent into darkness reached a critical juncture as the party found themselves on the 98th floor of the labyrinth. With heavy breaths and rain pouring down, May, her crimson hair damp and wild, struggled to stay composed amid the chaos of the ongoing battle. Her eyes widened in horror as she watched Wim Strauss standing atop a colossal armored beast that dominated the flooded battlefield. A sinister, echoing laugh rippled through the storm, as a shadowed figure observed the scene with a cruel, mocking grin. The scene shifts back several months, revealing the party deep within the stone-carved tunnels of the labyrinth. Wim, trembling, grips his dagger tightly, narrating the harsh truth. Those who pursue greed beyond prudent retreat often meet their doom. The remnants of dragons' wings lie shattered and blood-stained on the cold stone, victims of a devastating encounter. Shock washes over Wim as he stares at the gruesome aftermath, unable to believe the nightmare unfolding before him. Clinging to faint hope, he prays that his comrades still breathe, despite their grave wounds. Suddenly, a thunderous crash shakes the room as a massive creature reveals itself behind the startled adventurer. A towering reptilian monster, with jagged scales and vicious teeth, blocks his path. It snarls low and guttural, locking its predatory gaze on its next victim. Faced with the true might of a floor boss, Wim finally grasps the overwhelming power wielded by such a beast. In a split second, the monster's explosive strike destroys the entire party, tossing them aside like rag dolls. Panicked, drenched in sweat, Wim understands that this single blow has incapacitated everyone. Desperately, he searches for a way to escape, calculating the impossible odds of holding off for rescue or carrying his unconscious allies to safety. Both options seem suicidal. With resignation, Wim prepares for the worst, realizing he has only one remaining option: to confront the monster directly. Murmuring the words of his secret technique, he readies his unique switch puppeteer ability. For a fleeting moment, shame gnaws at him as he considers abandoning his fallen friends to save himself. But memories of how Dragon's Wings had welcomed him, and the bonds they had forged over countless days, push him to stand firm. From the shadows, a wicked presence continues to sneer, reveling in the tragedy unfolding before them. As the beast unleashes a deafening roar, Wim feels a surge of pride for choosing to stand and fight. This moment becomes a defining point in his life. The memory of the labyrinth's chaos fades, replaced by the calm of the dragon's nest, where the group once gathered in safety. Back in the present, Wim stands nervously before his companions within their shared home, sensing an unsettling weight in the air. Confusion clouds his mind as he falters, struggling to understand the cold, strange shift in his friend's demeanor, unable to grasp the reason for this sudden change. Wim's heart plummeted as a sudden flash of movement caught him completely off guard. To his shock, his own leader aimed a heavy blade directly at his throat, eyes cold and filled with menace. Kronos, commander of the Dragon's Wings, looked down with contempt and harshly ordered Wim to disappear like the worthless scum he believed him to be. Mage Mies and Priest Nikur offered no support. Instead, they mocked him openly, implying that he no longer belonged among their elite group. They ridiculed his attempt at heroism, dismissing his final strike on the boss as nothing but luck. Kronos scoffed at Wim's efforts, claiming that his own magic sword and Melee's spells were the true factors that had subdued the creature. Stunned by this betrayal, Wim stammered that he had never seen their teamwork that way and had always thought the victory was earned together. A painful memory flooded his mind. Kneeling exhausted beside the defeated beast, foolishly hoping his allies would praise his contribution. Instead, the party's words turned poisonous, accusing him of providing support buffs that were insufficient, directly causing some of their injuries. Harsh accusations rained down as former friends coldly blamed him for every mistake made inside the labyrinth. Wim's mind darkened with the horrifying realization that they had despised him from the very beginning. His face twisted in silent agony as the weight of rejection crushed his spirit into despair. Desperate to save himself, Wim kept apologizing, stumbling over his words, begging to remain part of the team. He knew that, as a mere supporter, no other guild would bother to hire him for future expeditions. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he pleaded to stay in the only place he had ever felt truly welcomed. Kronos paused for a moment, showing no emotion, then proposed a cruel test to determine his fate. Drawing his sword, he laid out an impossible condition. Wim must defeat him in combat to earn his place among the team. Realization struck Wim painfully. He, a non-combatant, stood no chance against the seasoned warrior. An uncontrollable laugh escaped him, born of despair and disbelief. Only a miracle could grant him victory against Kronos. Annoyed, Kronos demanded to know what was so funny in such a grim predicament. Before Wim could answer, Kronos lunged forward, grabbing him by the throat and lifting him effortlessly off the ground. Kronos spat insults, branding him a worthless fool who only managed beginner-level support spells. With rage in his voice, he declared that someone like Wim, a low-level supporter, should never challenge his authority. Wim gasped for air as Kronos' grip tightened, his pleas ignored, sinking into darkness as his world faded to silence. With a thunderous crash, Kronos struck the defenseless Grantaire, flinging him aside like discarded rubbish while berating him as a weakling. His clenched fist trembled with rage, unable to accept that someone so feeble could be credited with a boss kill. Wim sank to the ground, coughing violently, bitter that he had risked his life for people who regarded him with such disdain. His hand fluttered against the floorboards as memories flooded his mind. His genuine wish to repay the dragon's wings for saving him decades ago, when he was just a humble mercenary. Tears of betrayal finally spilled over, pain piercing his broken heart as the harsh truth of his abandonment sank in. Suddenly, a shadow cast itself over the room, and elegant high-heeled boots appeared in the doorway. Weakly, Wim lifted his blood-stained, tear-streaked face, struggling to identify the newcomer amid the haze of pain. In his frailty, he managed a faint question about the figure standing above him. Kronos introduced a woman named Sophia, informing him she had already been chosen to join the party in Wimstead. Silent, Sophia bowed as Kronos boasted that her superior skills would effortlessly fill the gap left by Wim's departure. Standing over his former ally, Kronos issued a final, chilling command for Wim to leave and never make him repeat himself. With icy finality, Kronos declared that the dragon's wings no longer had any use for him and ordered him to go immediately. The camera lingered on Wim's face, capturing the terror and shock etched into his expression as his body broke into a cold sweat at the sting of betrayal. The scene shifted to a vast, ancient city defined by intricate architecture and a towering clock that stretched skyward. High above bustling streets, birds circled the ornate spire of the clock tower, serving as a landmark in this hub of adventurers. This city was forged by the dreams and hopes of young explorers seeking fortune within its depths. Market stalls brimmed with rare treasures, high fins from the 3rd and 55th floors, magic stones from the 60th, and other priceless materials traded as invaluable commodities. Beyond the city gates lay uncharted territories teeming with rare monster materials and hidden sites unmatched anywhere on the surface. In this world, achievement dictated one's status, and the bonds formed through shared peril were said to surpass family ties. Those daring enough to explore the labyrinth's dangerous depths were revered as true adventurers. Now, abandoned and alone, Wim wandered the streets in complete despair, muttering that he simply wished to die. He feared that, despite the frequent jobs offered by the Adventurers Guild, no party would ever accept a Grantaire, as the role was widely despised and unpopular. Standing before the Twick Inn, he contemplated whether to hunt small game alone or seek out a modest party, though he questioned his own worthiness. The sounds of boisterous laughter and drinks spilling from inside contrasted sharply with his bleak mood. As he stared at the few coins still clenched in his hand, he realized how little he had left since his exile. Aware that sorrow often calls for solace, he resolved to drown his pain with a drink. Taking a deep breath, he pushed open the door, which rang out with a welcoming chime. Immediately, a lively voice greeted him warmly. Greetin', a cheerful waitress with a disarmingly broad smile, spotted him instantly and called out his name cheerfully. He offered a polite nod in reply, and she mentioned she had heard the latest news about his party. She eagerly congratulated him on their recent success against a floor boss, whispering that their achievement might soon earn them a promotion to air rank after the guild's review. The other patrons eagerly joined in, teasing him about celebrating and joking whether he'd treat the tavern to kindness. Greeton predicted that Dragon's Wings would soon climb higher, all based on their recent victory. Lacking enthusiasm, Wim declined the proffered festivity, opting instead for a beer and his usual plate of sausage. He settled alone at the bar, beginning to eat in silence as the knife sliced through his meal, but the bitterness left a foul taste in his mouth. His troubled heart seemed to spoil his appetite. Without warning, a familiar, eerie laugh escaped him, causing him to flinch and cover his mouth in surprise. Memories flooded back. How Kronos had often told him to stop laughing that way because it was disgusting. Then, a sudden realization dawned. He was no longer part of Dragon's Wings and finally free from their strict rules. As he glanced around at groups of adventurers, he felt a profound loneliness, knowing his family had cast him aside. He reflected on their celebrations, admitting to himself that he'd never truly been part of their conversations anyway. Looking down at his empty plate, he recalled the bittersweet moments he shared with his former party, acknowledging that, overall, those times had been enjoyable. Nonetheless, reality settled heavily. He had lost his home and belonged nowhere now. Greeton watched him quietly from afar, her expression filled with silent sympathy for the broken soul before her. Suddenly, the doorbell rang sharply, startling Wim from his gloom. To his shock, a disheveled Heidi Marie stood panting in the doorway. He demanded to know why she had followed him there. Her face, streaked with distress, reflected unspoken regret as she looked at him with eyes full of remorse. The scene shifts to the majestic, intricately adorned domes of the Adventurers Guild headquarters, towering over the city skyline. Inside the grand office of the Guild Master, an official reports formally on the inspection of the enormous crocodile carcass that was slain on the 98th floor. The Guild Master listens carefully as the adventurers describe their joint effort, then asks for the true assessment of the battle. He probes whether there are inconsistencies between the Dragon's Wings official report and the physical evidence discovered at the scene. A meticulous examination of the beast's body reveals that most of the wounds, including the fatal blow, were inflicted with a simple machete. The examiner concludes that although magic and enchanted swords left tracks, they lacked the strength to truly damage such a formidable creature. The investigation takes a surprising turn when it is confirmed that only Wim Strauss was armed with a machete. The official then reaches what seems an almost impossible conclusion, that an unskilled individual somehow defeated the boss monster of the floor entirely on his own, using only his own strength. Meanwhile, a mysterious figure studies a detailed map of the city, paying close attention to a specific location marked amidst the labyrinth of streets. A girl nearby, bewildered, wonders why Wim's tracker crest suddenly moved away from the Dragon's Wing headquarters to a cheap inn. She rummages through her gear, muttering softly as she searches for her wiretap device to collect more information. A sharp beep confirms her success as she locates her target, revealing the precise source of the transmission. Through her device, she overhears Kronos' cruel voice telling Wim to get lost, labeling him scum, which confirms her worst fears. Filled with rage, she clenches her fists and vows to punish Kronos for daring to speak that way about her beloved Wim. Desperate to find him, she rushes toward the abandoned inn, calling his name loudly as she approaches the tall wooden building. Inside, the door suddenly bursts open, and the breathless girl stumbles in, immediately attracting the attention of the startled patrons. Wim turns around in shock, eyes widening as Hyde Mary stands in the doorway, exhausted and flushed from running. Greta Sandan greets her with a knowing smile, though Wim remains too stunned to comprehend Hyde Mary's sudden appearance. The waitress teases Hyde Mary with a mischievous grin, calling her stalker Esch, and relishing her flustered reaction. Hyde Mary quickly retorts that her name actually doesn't contain an S, and she calls Greta a cowgirl in return. The two exchange teasing insults, Hyde Mary repeatedly shouting "drop dead," while Greta smugly pats her chest with a playful sound effect. Ignoring the banter, Hyde Mary then turns to Wim, insisting she isn't there to argue with the waitress. She approaches his table, visibly worried, and asks if he's all right, but Wim can only stammer in confusion. Wim presumes that word of his dismissal has already spread and nervously inquires if her visit is related to Dragon's Wings. Hyde Mary dismisses any gossip, leaving Wim puzzled over how she sensed something was wrong without hearing rumors. Casually, she reveals that she knows everything about him, which only deepens the mystery behind her sudden appearance. She claims it's merely because they hail from the same village, though Wim appears visibly frightened by her implication. A flashback shows a younger Wim realizing that her explanation actually makes sense, easing his suspicions slightly. Still confused, he wonders if some specific incident prompted her hurried visit, scratching his head in bewilderment. Hyde Mary and Greta sense that something serious has occurred, as Wim appears dejected and struggles to speak. He awkwardly rubs the back of his neck before finally revealing the truth. He has been fired from Dragon's Wings. The tavern falls silent in shock, patrons freezing mid-meal as the weight of his confession settles. One adventurer slams his hand onto the table, demanding to know why Wim was dismissed when his party was just about to earn an A-rank promotion. The crowd murmurs among themselves, noting that while the other 3 members are well known, Wim was mostly recognized for chores and mundane tasks. Wim explains he was given little time to pack but left all the necessary documents for his companions. He minimizes his role, insisting anyone could do his job and that his replacement, a beautiful elf named Sophia, seems highly capable. As he mentions her name, Hyde Mary's attention sharpens. She listens closely as Wim describes the new member who has taken his place in the party. Greta scoffs disdainfully, calling Kronos a notorious womanizer for quickly replacing a party member with a new girl. Hyde Mary nods solemnly, admitting that rumors about their leader's behavior are probably true. Wim hangs his head, regretful that he couldn't earn enough trust to keep his position. A nervous, sheepish laugh escapes him, a habit Kronos despised, and he quickly covers his mouth, panicking. It's a mistake he recognizes instantly. Hyde Mary leans in gently, smiling softly, and points out that he still hasn't fixed that peculiar laugh of his. Wim averts his eyes in shame and asks if she finds it disgusting, just as his former leader did. Hyde Mary shakes her head kindly, assuring him she doesn't dislike it. Instead, she admits she actually likes the way he laughs because it feels genuine, like him. Flustered at her compliment, Wim stammers that she shouldn't say such things or he might misunderstand her intentions. Hyde Mary gazes at him intently, her expression tender, and confesses she wouldn't mind if he did. Steam nearly bursts from Wim's ears as he frantically waves his hands, begging her to stop teasing him. The table briefly falls silent as he struggles to regain his composure after the sudden display of affection. Returning to the main topic, Wim gazes into his drink and admits he still doesn't fully understand why he was dismissed from his job. Mary, sitting calmly with her drink, casually remarks that he single-handedly defeated the floor boss. Wim blinks in confusion, questioning the logic of such an assertion. She sets her glass down, explaining that none of the other members could inflict enough damage to kill the boss, leaving Wim as the sole victor. Panic overtakes him as he waves his hands, insisting it was a misunderstanding and that he only delivered a lucky finishing blow. He says the real damage was a collective effort by his team, but Hyde Mary cuts him off sharply, asserting that only Wim's attacks harmed the boss. He stammers nervously, convinced that Mary greatly overestimates his abilities as a support mage. Claiming he only sought to avoid becoming a burden, he reflects on how others had displayed exceptional skills, yet he still wonders why she holds him in such high regard, when he sees himself as a failure. Mary blushes and avoids his gaze, struggling to find words to express her unwavering faith. Greta, noticing tension, speaks up from across the counter with concern. She notes that she's lived here all her life and has never heard of someone defeating a floor boss alone. She warns Mary against inventing strange stories just to flatter her obsession. Greta scolds her for crossing a line, but Mary retorts that she knows the truth because she secretly recorded the battle. The bustling tavern continues around them, yet the weight of Mary's confession hangs heavily in the air. Wim, staring into his cup, murmurs that the real reason he was fired was simply a lack of trust. Mary slams her hand onto the table in frustration, her face twisted with annoyance. She demands Wim stop with his pathetic attitude immediately. Turning towards the bar, she orders a beer and rudely calls Greta a cowgirl. Greta protests about Mary's poor alcohol tolerance, but Mary dismisses her and insists she pour the drink regardless. Wim sits quietly, uncomfortable, while Greta sighs and agrees to bring only one mug. A large wooden tankard of beer is slammed onto the table in front of Mary, who immediately launches into a drunken lecture about cognitive dissonance and the legend of the fox and the grapes. Before she can finish her thoughts, she slumps face first onto the table and passes out. Moments later, she jolts awake, demanding another drink, only to be told by Greta that she's still on her first mug. Deciding she's had enough, Wim announces that their day's outing is over. Before departing, Mary subtly placed a business card on the table, pushing it toward her friend. Wim picked it up, studying the name Naklu with a puzzled expression. The card featured the emblem of the most prestigious A-rank faction, known for its high social standing and rigorous screening process. Wim recalled that Mary had joined this elite group early in her career, quickly making a notable reputation. A flashback revealed Mary writing a note and inviting Wim to visit their headquarters the following day. When asked if he could simply show up, she explained he needed to work with them temporarily to gain experience and assured him she would vouch for him. With pride swelling within her, she boasted that, as the 74th sage and a candidate for the highest ranks, arranging such a visit was effortless for her. Returning to the present, a drowsy Mary groaned as Wim gently carried her out of the inn beneath the night sky. He expressed gratitude to Greta for the meal while adjusting the sleeping girl on his back. Greta inquired whether he needed a strength boost to manage her weight, but Wim chuckled, assuring her she wasn't heavy. Mumbling softly in her sleep, Mary whispered about Grantaires being weak while pressing her cheek against Wim's shoulder. Greta waved them off, cautioning Wim to beware of drunken adventurers wandering the streets at this late hour. He moved through the faintly lit cobblestone alleyways, lost in thoughts about the invitation he had received. Concern gnawed at him, fearing that the other members of Nacht Libo would look upon him unfavorably if he accepted based solely on Mary's recommendation. A wave of insecurity clouded his face, as he worried that a person of his skill level might bring trouble to such an elite group. His deepest fear was that inevitable failure would lead Mary to despise him someday. Suddenly, a glass bottle soared out of the darkness toward them. The bottle shattered violently on the ground nearby, accompanied by a visual impact effect suggesting a 100-point hit. From a nearby alley, mocking laughter erupted as a figure in the shadows jeered. One of the intoxicated men sneered, claiming the thrower missed entirely. Another of the drunken revelers tilted his head back, finishing the last of his drink from a dark bottle. Exhaling contentedly, he declared it was his turn and handed the empty vessel to his equally drunken companion. Ignoring the heckling, Wim pressed on, carrying Mary past the rowdy men who shouted that their bottle had failed its mark. He moved steadily without slowing, prompting one of the drunken men to call out aggressively. The intoxicated individual staggered forward with a flushed face, squinting as he tried to make sense of his blurry surroundings. Stepping into the light, he confronted Wim, slurring his words as he demanded attention, his gaze fixed on the figure strapped to Wim's back. The man hesitated, trying to identify who was being carried. Mary, peacefully asleep on Wim's shoulder, let out a soft hiccup that drew the drunk's attention. Recognition suddenly crosses the man's face as he points accusingly and shouts that she is the thief from earlier that day. Wim pauses in confusion, repeating the word thief as he struggles to reconcile this accusation with his sleeping companion. The men cry out together that she had bought the entire stock of rare snowball snacks while they were still waiting in line. Though he secretly finds their petty grievance foolish, Wim feels a twinge of pity for their obsession over such a trivial matter. Ignoring reason, the angry men demand immediate action and order Wim to wake her so she can apologize. With a troubled expression, Wim realizes that reasoning his way out of this situation is futile. Frustration mounting, The men shout at him to stop hesitating. One of them reaches out and roughly shakes Hyde Mary, yelling at Wim to rouse her. At that instant, a glowing magic crest ignites on Wim's chest as he silently activates his Zymol ability, doubling his physical strength. In a flash, Wim disappears from the spot, leaving the men grasping at empty air. The two drunks stand stunned in the silent street, bewildered as they look around, puzzled about where their target vanished. Quickly moving through alleyways, Wim silently apologizes on behalf of Hyde Mary, recalling how she had shared those very candies with him. Back in the alley, the aggressive drunk remains frozen, mouth agape, unable to process the incredible speed he just witnessed. Wim mentally distances himself from the confrontation, concerned that his sudden departure might have only increased their anger. The two men stand trembling, the chilling truth of what they just saw beginning to sink in. Horror washes over their faces as they realize the girl sleeping on the ground was none other than the infamous Hyde Mary of Nacht Libel. They whisper urgently, wondering if the man able to move with such impossible speed also belongs to that elite group. One of them gazes at the ground, pale and shaken, asking his partner if they noticed the damage left behind. Jagged gouges mar the stone pavement where Wim had launched himself forward, illustrating the sheer force of his leap. Unaware of the fear he has caused, Wim speeds through the city streets with Hyde Mary secured on his back. He finally slows near the clock tower, catching his breath and reassuring himself that the pursuers won't follow. Resting safely, Hyde Mary gives a contented groan in her sleep, completely unaware of the chaos she's created. Feeling a shift on his back, Wim asks softly if she is awake, checking whether she is sober enough to walk. Instead of releasing him, she tightens her arms around his neck in a gentle squeeze and whispers she can't move just yet. Wim recalls her earlier promise to vouch for him joining her formidable group, easing his worries about the future. A wave of deep self-doubt washes over him as he questions whether someone of his modest standing truly has the right to join a legendary group like Nacht Libel. He reflects on the vast divide between himself and its members, recognizing that she is not only a rare sage but also a top candidate for the guild's highest ranks. Guilt presses heavily on his chest, convincing him that he cannot afford to cause any more trouble for the one person who has always treated him with genuine kindness. A vivid memory emerges. Hyde Mary shouting at him to simply come along, her emotional strength overcoming his insecurities. He vividly recalls her hand gripping his shoulder with tight determination, anchoring him amid uncertainty and reaffirming her unwavering support. Softly, she whispers into his ear that endless possibilities await him, and that he will truly discover his worth once he stands beside Nacht Libel. With a calm but assertive tone, she urges Wim to cease holding himself back and to start living according to his desires. Her smiling face fills his mind, radiating warmth and unconditional trust that he has long yearned for. Filled with gratitude, Wim mutters a heartfelt thank you for her coming to find him when he was lost in the depths of despair. Empowered by her words, he declares that if he is to live freely, she should also feel free to pursue her own happiness. As he attempts to reorient himself to reality, he awkwardly suggests that, now that she is awake and sober, she might consider getting off his back. Hyde Mary immediately and bluntly refuses with a single word, burying her face deeper into his coat to hide her flushed cheeks. When he asks why, she mumbles that his back is comfortable and she has no intention of moving. She whispers that he is warm and his broad back provides a sense of safety and peace she desperately needs to hold on to. Her voice softens to a gentle plea, asking him to let her stay like this just a little longer. Embarrassed by the sudden intimacy, Wim stammers a hesitant agreement and resolves to carry her as long as she wishes. As he walks forward into the silent night, Wim silently vows to leave his past behind and to give his best effort beginning tomorrow. The emblem of Nacht Libel stands proudly, symbolizing the largest A-rank party in the land, boasting more than 100 elite members. A majestic mansion towers against the sky, serving as the guild's headquarters, a fortress established by a group that has defeated roughly 30% of all known floor bosses. A stoic guard, clad in heavy armor, stands vigil at the iron gates, eyes constantly scanning for any signs of trouble. Wim paces nervously before the entrance, anxiety emanating from him in almost tangible waves while the guard observes. Beads of sweat trickle down Wim's face as he hesitates, crippled by self-doubt and questioning whether he truly belongs in such a prestigious setting. The guard narrows his eyes at the fidgeting young man, immediately perceiving him as suspicious because of his restless demeanor. Deciding to intervene, the guard approached the visibly agitated young man and demanded to know his purpose at the guild. Startled by the sudden confrontation, Wim froze in fear, stammering as he struggled to explain himself. Overcome by panic, he unintentionally let out his unsettling signature laugh right into the guard's face. Mistaking the noise and movement for a hostile act, the guard instinctively recoiled, readying himself in suspicion. In a desperate attempt to defuse the situation, Wim fumbled for a business card Hyde Mary had previously given him and presented it trembling. His act seemed to startle the guard profoundly. Upon reading the card, the realization dawned that this suspicious youth was allied with her. The guard's face registered shock as he processed the information, with particular emphasis on the word her, which he seemed to regard with strange gravity. Suddenly, Hyde Mary appeared, radiating warmth and greeting Wim warmly as he was ushered into the headquarters of Nak Lebo. As Wim stepped inside, he gasped at the splendor surrounding him, his eyes widening at the shimmering fountain and luxurious decor. Hyde Mary pointed out the enormous training hall and spacious cafeteria, prompting Wim to marvel aloud that this place resembled a royal estate rather than a typical party retreat. Feeling modest and overwhelmed, he quietly excused himself, navigating the grand corridors with a sense of insignificance in such opulence. The guard, Abel, apologized for his earlier brusqueness but sternly remarked that Wim did not resemble the person he had been led to expect. With a mixture of embarrassment and confusion, Abel poked fun at the discrepancy, suggesting that the description he'd received painted a very different picture. Flustered, Hyde Mary snapped at Abel to be quiet, while the guard insisted she had described him as a handsome, masculine hero. To hide her discomfort, Hyde Mary hurriedly pulled Wim away from Abel and hurried down the hall. They entered a lively central hall filled with high-level adventurers preparing for quests or exchanging stories. Hyde Mary paused before a seated figure and formally announced her guest. Her words caught the attention of a woman with sleek, silver hair who regarded Wim with a calm, piercing gaze. Stunned, Wim looked up, instantly recognizing the formidable aura she exuded. It was clear he was face to face with Kama, the legendary leader of Naklabal. Kama scrutinized him critically, commenting that he appeared much smaller than the formidable warrior she had anticipated. A hearty laugh escaped her lips as she teased him about the rumor of his handsomeness and masculinity. Amid the chaos, Hyde Mary panicked briefly, but the woman extended her armored hand toward Wim, offering a firm handshake heavy with strength. Nervously, Wim grasped her hand and introduced himself as a former member of Dragon's Wings, stepping confidently into his new role. Kama's expression softened, genuine respect shining through as she acknowledged the surprising strength hidden beneath the unassuming appearance of this newcomer. She formally welcomed him to Nak Libel, revealing that Hyde Mary had already shared details about his abilities. Wim nervously stammered that he had low mana and had only performed chores, prompting Camila to inquire about his previous role within his former party. He explained that his responsibilities were limited to non-combat tasks such as enemy detection and clerical work. When he attempted to mention being dismissed from his last team, Hyde Mary quickly cut him off, panicking and silencing him to prevent revealing unnecessary negative information. Ignoring their exchange, Camila calmly assigned Wim to the rearguard during their upcoming scouting mission. Wim was struck by shock and disbelief as he stammered, overwhelmed by the idea of entering the labyrinth immediately. Camila moved forward confidently, stating that experience was the best teacher, leaving Wim to grapple with the sudden command. Anxiety engulfed him as he protested that it was too soon and that he had never raided with such a large group before. Hyde Mary flashed a bright smile and reassured him that everything would turn out perfectly. Yet, Wim stood frozen with an expression of pure terror, unconvinced by her optimistic tone amid such danger. The scene shifted to the labyrinth's deep, stone-walled corridors, cold and foreboding. The entire Nak-Libel guild gathered quietly around a luminous stone pillar at the chamber's center. Ancient runes flickered to life on its surface as the magical device prepared for teleportation. A blinding column of light erupted from the pillar, indicating that the teleportation circle was fully charged. This circuit was crucial for navigating the dungeon. Specifically, it allowed instant travel across multiple floors after defeating a floor boss. The massive group began their march, armored footsteps echoing loudly on the stone. Wim froze in confusion when he noticed Hyde Mary suddenly halt right in front of him. The others paused too, sensing a shift in the atmosphere as the entire procession stopped. A seasoned guild member looked back with a serious expression, awaiting the leader's decision to resolve the delay. Hyde Mary stood silently with a stoic demeanor, preparing to enforce a security measure for outsiders. Confused, Wim asked her what was happening and why everyone had come to a stop. She produced a thick cloth and apologized as she asked him to wear a blindfold temporarily. Hyde Mary explained that because he was technically an outsider, he couldn't be allowed to see the guild's secret teleportation network. Wim accepted without complaint, understanding that safeguarding this valuable route was necessary. Now completely blindfolded, he waited as Hyde Mary instructed him to reach out and grasp her hand. Clinging tightly, Wim allowed her to guide him through the darkness, trusting that this precaution was essential for their safety. Silence lingered as they stood hand in hand, the onlookers of the party silently observing their quiet connection. Mary blushed deeply, her cheeks burning with embarrassment, yet within she thrilled at his daring display of affection. Meanwhile, Wim flailed his hands in a flurry, panicked and stumbling over his words, insisting he should hold her shoulder instead, since he couldn't see. He begged Hyde to cease teasing him, unaware that she secretly enjoyed the closeness of their touch. Guided by his friend, the blindfolded mage trailed behind as the group activated a series of concealed teleportation circles, their destination set. Soon, they reached the formidable and expansive architecture of the 97th floor, nestled deep within the labyrinthine structure. Wim gazed in awe at the efficiency of an A-rank party, marveling at how swiftly they had descended so far. Anxiety gripped his chest, sparking doubts about his usefulness, as he worried that his habit of mere imitation would hinder their progress. He paced himself aside, glancing at the hesitant recruit, and realized his cautiousness stemmed from the fact that it was his first time on such an expedition. Instead of irritation, a faint smile touched her lips as she observed his nerves, knowing that carefulness is a valuable trait for any adventurer. Suddenly, Wim let out a sharp yelp as he collided with an obstacle, only to see Kama standing just behind him. The silver-haired leader looked down kindly and gently advised him not to be so tense. She reminded him that he had already defeated this floor's boss with his previous B-rank party, so there was no reason to fret. Camila instructed him simply to do what he could, emphasizing that their main focus for the day was mapping the environment. Overcome with gratitude for her unexpected kindness, Wim's eyes stung with tears as he softly acknowledged her words. Camila reassured him once more that Nak-Libel was full of good-hearted people, helping him finally settle. His expression shifted from worry to focus as he began scanning the surroundings with renewed attention for irregularities. Suddenly, a strange anomaly drew his gaze, freezing him in place as he looked up at the darkened dungeon walls with alarm. He hesitated to speak, telling Hyde Mary that he might have heard a noise but doubted himself, fearing it could be a figment of his imagination. Torn between reporting and staying silent, he wondered if the strange sound was an omen hinting at a concealed danger nearby. Opting for caution, he expanded his magical sensing range, questioning whether something ominous was lurking. Raising his hand, he concentrated his mana to cast a specialized detection spell into the shadows. A complex magic circle materialized before his palm as he activated his search, aiming to reveal what lay hidden in the darkness. The spell illuminated the corridor ahead, exposing the dungeon's concealed structures and secrets to his magical sight. His eyes widened in shock as the scan confirmed his suspicions, revealing a clear and present threat lurking in wait. He remembered the strict command to immediately report any discoveries to Camila through transmission magic. Steeling his nerves, he acknowledged the instruction and prepared to alert her about the looming danger. The group continued ascending a majestic staircase, completely unaware of the trap mechanism activated silently in the shadows. Wim stepped out of formation and politely called Camila, requesting a moment of her attention. She turned her head slightly, indicating she recognized him as Wim Boy and was awaiting his report. He precisely explained that a rockfall trap was set to activate on the upper left side in exactly 45 meters. Camila scrutinized the certainty of his account, her keen gaze piercing the tense atmosphere. Wim hesitated but maintained his composure, estimating a 90% chance that the trap would trigger with a delay. With a relaxed gesture, Camila instructed him to broadcast his findings on the open channel in future. Swallowing hard, Wim hesitated, terrified at the thought of addressing the entire party. Summoning his courage, he activated the transmission magic and sent his voice echoing to everyone present. He delivered an astonishingly detailed report, specifying the approximate weight, shape, and position of the impending rockfall. A ripple of confusion spread among the front line, seasoned fighters startled by the sudden warning. Previously held doubts arose as whispers, causing Wim to panic and wonder if he'd made a dire mistake. While Wim broke into a sweat, Hyde Mary smirked with pride as Camila calmly directed her tank to neutralize the threat. Abel stepped forward without hesitation, declaring he would personally handle the trap. The armored warrior strode boldly into the danger area, lifting his massive shield in readiness. He positioned himself at the trigger point, prepared as the mechanism beneath his feet clicked into motion. A massive stone pillar dropped from above, aiming to crush him instantly. With a resounding crash, Abel caught the falling monolith on his shield, halting its descent completely. Unharmed and composed, he announced that the trap was neutralized as the dust settled around him. Camila nodded approvingly at the successful defense, while the rest of the party gazed in stunned silence. They murmured in disbelief, realizing that the trap matched Wim's detailed description precisely. Incredulous, they exchanged looks, never before witnessing a scout predict the shape and weight of a trap so accurately. Speculation about his extraordinary talent spread rapidly, with many pondering whether this near-divine accuracy was the secret strength of the dragon's wings. Hyde Mary grinned mischievously, while a panicked Wim misunderstood the silence and feared he was in trouble. Hyde Mary cheerfully explained that Wim's usual abilities were extraordinary, and soon he would prove that his skill was no coincidence. During a brief moment of rest, the party members sat in awe, while Camila gazed into the distance, contemplating the revelation. She suddenly realized that Wim casually employed high-level detection magic as effortlessly as breathing. Her thoughts drift back to the history of dragon wings, a pursuit that soared to prominence in record time. Confusion gnaws at her as she questions why someone with such exceptional, game-changing magic was kept hidden and then dismissed. Suddenly, the silence is broken by Wim's voice, calling for her attention once more. He reports a sudden increase in humidity and an inexplicable scarcity of low-level winged insects in the area. The seasoned explorers listen closely as he explains that these environmental changes hint at a dangerous predator lurking nearby. Wim concludes that they have unknowingly entered the hunting grounds of a colossal hostile creature. He identifies the threat as the massive tortoise Zeratin and quickly suggests a detour to avoid confrontation. Camila narrows her eyes and asks for confirmation about the certainty of Wim's assessment regarding the beast's territory. He meets her gaze with nervousness and affirms he's 90% sure of his conclusion. She exhales in a sigh and reminds him to report only high-probability threats through the public channel. Frustrated by his hesitation, Wim hangs his head in shame and offers a quiet, apologetic response, fearing he's disappointed the leader. Panic begins to spiral as he convinces himself that he has committed another critical mistake. Without warning, Camila orders him to transfer search duties to Simon and to move forward to the front lines. His heart sinks, interpreting the command as a punishment, and he fears he's been dismissed from his role. Yet, Camila addresses the team, declaring they will not take a detour but will instead hunt the great tortoise. She turns her piercing gaze back to the recruit and states she wants to see his skills as a grantaire in real combat. A terrified Wim realizes that failing now might leave him with no future in this world. Summoning his courage, he clenches his fists and vows to do his utmost to be of use. Camila immediately shifts her attention, demanding a status report on the enemy from the other scout. Simon checks his detection magic and reports that the target, a sleeping creature, is roughly 200 meters ahead. The leader issues swift commands, instructing Abel to lead the vanguard and Heidmary to prepare her spells. The elite members of Naklabal respond in unison, readying themselves for battle. Camila points directly at Wim, assigning him the vital task of supporting Abel with buff spells. Nervously, Wim shouts his agreement, steeling himself for the fight that could define his future. He closes his eyes and recites his personal mantra, to live discreetly, helping others without drawing attention. His sole goal, he thought, was to discover what he could do to assist from the shadows. But then, a sharp, intense gaze pierces his thoughts as he recognizes how far reality has diverged from his idealistic path. In the distance, the massive tortoise crunches ominously on debris, its presence terrifyingly close. Wim stands frozen, staring at the beast. The signal is clear: hide. Mary pushes him forward, urging them to strike while the monster remains fixated on its meal. She emphasizes that with all eyes upon them, this moment offers the perfect opportunity to demonstrate his value to the guild. The top-tier members of Naked Libel, including Camila, gaze down at the duo with sharp, scrutinizing expressions. Under their intense stare, Wim flinches, overwhelmed by the pressure of performing in front of such legendary figures. His heart pounds fiercely as he resolves to atone for his earlier mistake and avoid causing additional trouble. Lost in a whirlwind of self-doubt about his communication skills, he barely registers Hyde calling his nickname. It takes Mary's sharp shout of his name next to his ear to jolt him out of his deprecation. She radiates confidence as she requests her usual support buff for an ice spear assault. Watching her prepare her massive weapon, Wim feels a wave of nostalgia, recalling their previous tandem dives and realizing that this familiar teamwork is exactly what he needed. A genuine smile begins to form despite his anxiety, and the oppressive weight of the situation starts to lift. Filled with renewed resolve, he pumps his fists and thanks Hyde Mary, declaring himself ready to fight. Mechanical parts click and lock into place as Hyde Mary's special magical device gets ready for activation. Striking a poised stance with her weapon, she announces that it's time to reveal the guild's true strength. Wim immediately notices the enhancements made to her gear. Impressed by how she has tripled its density while reducing its size, he grins appreciatively, recognizing her brilliant engineering as what he had come to expect from her. Hyde Mary activates the generation sequence, her eyes shining with excitement as she begins the spell. Mana starts swirling in the air, sparkling with intense energy as the magic materializes. Meanwhile, the enormous tortoise ceases eating and shifts its massive head, finally sensing the imminent threat. And heavy silence settles over the battlefield as the colossal beast fixes its gaze on the tiny adventurers below. High above, a vast spear of solid ice materializes with a thunderous crack, poised to strike. The massive projectile hovers ominously over the ruins, dwarfing the pillars and the fighters beneath. Wim gazes upward, struck by awe at the scale of this magic's power. An impressive display that would confound any ordinary mage. Hyde Mary laughs confidently, wielding abilities rooted in principles far beyond modern magic standards. An infographic reveals that while jobs like sorcerers or priests are limited to specific magical types, sages break those boundaries. It states that Hyde Mary's sage class is the most powerful, as it grants her access to every existing form of magic. She explains to Wim that sages possess the rare skill to create fundamental magic units, allowing them to craft entirely new spells from scratch. With theatrical flair, she officially expressed her approval of the grant awarded by Grantaire Wim Strauss. Wim responded with a warm smile, accepting this acknowledgement as he prepared to begin the enchantment process. Concentrating his mana, he cast sturdy, icy enchantments directly onto the radiant magic circle. This circle expanded, intertwining seamlessly with a colossal ice structure floating high above the ruins. Suddenly, Hyde Mary realized with a start that instead of augmenting her spell, Wim had applied his strengthening magic directly onto the enchantment construct itself. The enormous ice projectile began to morph as the enchantment took hold, transforming into a menacing weapon with a sharper, more dangerous appearance. She shouted a command to fire just as the massive tortoise advanced perilously close to their position. With a deafening roar, the enormous ice spear launched forward at blinding speed, appearing almost as a streak tearing through the air. Upon impact, a catastrophic explosion erupted, scattering shards of ice and debris in every direction. Members of Nacht Libel, including Camilla, screamed in horror as the shockwave battered them. The force lifted the beast off the ground, smashing it violently into the walls of the ruins. Adventurers hurried to shield their faces and brace themselves against the fierce winds generated by the impact. The great tortoise was utterly destroyed. Its shell was shattered, and its body pierced by massive spikes of enchanted ice. Shivering from the cold, Wim apologized to Hyde Mary, worried that he might have overpowered the magic. She reassured him that his work was flawless and noted that he had convincingly demonstrated his skill to everyone present. Turning to the party leader with a proud smile, she asked Camilla what she thought of Wim's impressive display. Suddenly, a sharp cracking sound drew attention to Camilla's armor. When she examined her shoulder pauldron, her expression remained unreadable as she scrutinized the unexpected damage. Wim, noticing the crack in her treasured armor, immediately panicked and thought he had failed again. Camilla called out to Vimboy with a firm tone, causing him to startle and answer with a nervous stammer. She calmly ignored her armor damage and ordered him to bolster their shield unit in preparation for an incoming wyvern attack. Turning away, she specifically requested to see his defensive enchantments in action, this time expecting better results. Wim, visibly nervous, nodded and quickly affirmed he understood, grateful to still have a chance to contribute. Hyde Mary watched this exchange with a smug, cat-like grin, sensing that Camilla had appreciated what she saw. Wim clenched his fist in determination, vowing to do his best, believing he had been given another opportunity. She, in turn, commented on his cluelessness, jesting that his inability to read the room was almost a sickness. Meanwhile, other party members whispered in awe about the incredible speed of the spear, while Hyde Mary smiled knowingly, satisfied that they finally appreciated his true worth. Two seasoned warriors watched the pair with sweat beading on their foreheads, awestruck by the sheer might of the strange new benefactor. Hyde Mary turned to his companion, suspicion flickering in his eyes, prompting Wim to frantically deny having said anything at all. A tall, armored soldier stepped forward with a courteous demeanor, introducing himself as Abel, the squad leader. Wim gazed at him, awestruck to realize that this young man, of roughly the same age, already commanded an entire unit. Abel tilted his head, puzzled, awaiting a response from the frozen recruit. Panic rapidly engulfed Wim as he understood that he had no idea how to reply to someone he didn't know. As Abel leaned in to ask if he was all right, Wim could only produce a jumble of nervous, incoherent sounds. His self-loathing grew as he convinced himself that his awkward silence made him appear utterly repulsive to the leader. A dark thought of rejection crept into his mind, fueling a fear that Abel would come to despise him just like everyone else. Unexpectedly, Abel broke into a radiant smile and gently advised Wim to stay calm. The nervous mage blushed, a warm glow spreading in his chest at such unexpected kindness. Abel then brought up the subject of defensive enhancements, but Wim timidly admitted that he lacked much experience with them. Another member of the party interjected, explaining that Grantaires are exceedingly rare in Nacht Libel because the profession is highly unpopular. Wim described his magic as working through consciousness, requiring the target's verbal consent for activation. He clarified that these enhancements could boost physical attributes such as strength or speed, or enhance weapon performance, emphasizing that willing participation was always necessary. Suddenly, a stern voice cut in to halt the discussion. A large, scarred man stepped forward and bluntly declared that he did not like receiving buffs. Wim froze, stunned, caught entirely off guard by this sudden rejection. The man identified himself as Mark and asked for more details, apologizing if his frankness seemed impolite. Mark explained that buffs alter how the body feels and recounted a distressing past experience with a reckless Grantaire who overloaded his attributes. During that event, Mark lost control of his own body mid-combat, causing chaos. Wim hurried to assure him that his earliest level enchantments would be safe, as they were carefully balanced and non-intrusive. He added that he used a sophisticated combination of simple effects, but Mark's expression only hardened with suspicion. Wim flinched under Mark's intense stare, feeling a shiver run down his spine. The veteran's teeth flashed in a menacing grin as he demanded whether Wim regarded him as an amateur just because he asked detailed questions. Overcome with fear, Wim believed he had managed to provoke the veteran's anger. But Mark clarified that he was genuinely interested in learning, not upset, and explained he wanted to understand the process better. Wim recognizes with quiet respect that Mark's probing questions stem from the meticulousness of a seasoned, albeit exhausted, liberal elite. He reassures the veteran that his senses will remain unaffected, yet Mark presses further, seeking absolute certainty. With a sharp, interrogative, Mark leans in aggressively, igniting a fresh wave of anxiety in the young mage. A tense silence ensues as Wim grapples with the unsettling sounds emanating from his superior, trying to decipher the meaning behind them. Confusion spreads among the SHIELD unit members as they question Wim's claim that his enhancement provides no sensory disturbance whatsoever. Requesting permission to clarify, Wim explains that the mechanism behind his spell is rooted in a core principle. The absence of sensory disruption is central to its design. Mark, hesitating but willing to listen, nods vaguely in agreement. A smile brightens Wim's face as he realizes this is the first time someone genuinely seeks an explanation. He launches into an enthusiastic lecture, contrasting the rusting approach with the casting method of magic application. He notes that since each adventurer's physique and strength vary, a universal enhancement is inherently flawed, emphasizing that indiscriminate magic boosts can even cause broken bones, which Mark acknowledges with a shout of agreement. Impressed by Wim's deep knowledge, Mark praises the high standards of Nac Label for producing such a scholar. Wim continues his rapid-fire explanation, delving into complex magical theories that fly over the others' heads. Recognizing he has been rambling, Wim quickly halts himself with a sheepish grin. Mark dismisses the apology, though he appears somewhat dazed by the sheer volume of technical detail. Wim then describes combining 7 defensive and 25 sensory enchantments into a single, flawlessly balanced spell. Seeing the information overload, Mark throws up his hands and yells for Wim to stop. The entire squad falls into stunned silence, gazing at the small mage who has just presented a mini-thesis on magic. Wim shrinks back, fearing his overly enthusiastic explanation might have ruined everything again. Recovering, Mark, in disbelief, asks if Wim truly claims he can apply dozens of enhancements at once. Wim modestly explains that he must meticulously carve and embed the spells due to limited mana reserves. Mark leans close once more to verify that his senses will stay exactly the same. Wim nods confidently, adding that the only difference will be a body functioning better than ever. With a solemn expression, Mark places a hand on his chest and officially affirms his approval of the enhancement. The others watch in shock, questioning whether he is truly willing to trust this newcomer. Mark, smiling broadly, declares Wim's vast knowledge sufficient proof of his competence. Wim, filled with awe, feels his heart swell at the realization that someone finally places faith in him. Tears welled up in his eyes as he silently vowed to do everything in his power to earn back that trust. A luminous, intricate magic circle formed around Mark's torso as Wim activated the spell. The seasoned warrior inhaled sharply, eyes widening in surprise as the enchantment seeped into his body. Mark stroked his chin thoughtfully, humming softly as he evaluated the subtle, almost imperceptible changes in his physique. In the training hall's cold stone chamber, Mark faced Abel, preparing to test the effects of the newly cast enhancement magic. Without warning, Mark shot forward with remarkable speed, delivering a heavy strike against Abel's shield to measure his altered strength. Their clash reverberated with fierce energy, movement swift and fluid despite their cumbersome armor. From the sidelines, Wim watched with anxious nerves, wringing his hands and timidly asking how the magic felt. Mark turned toward him with a grave expression, simply stating that words were unnecessary. What mattered was the overwhelming sensation of power. He admitted with awe that he could now move better than he had in his physical prime. Abel nodded eagerly, marveling at how light her body felt. So much so that it almost seemed unreal. Relieved that he hadn't hurt anyone, Wim clutched his chest and exhaled a heartfelt, "Thank goodness." The other shield knights immediately pressed him, demanding he accelerate their enhancements as well. Wim's face lit up with a genuine, joyful smile, and he readily agreed to boost the entire squad. The scene shifted swiftly to the sprawling expanse between towering pillars inside the dungeon. The main force assembled, ready for battle. Suddenly, Wim shivered visibly, his senses flooded with the sensation of a formidable hostile presence nearby. He muttered softly that the enemy had arrived, his instincts screaming of a major threat approaching. A teammate noticed his trembling and asked if he was all right, but Wim warned that something massive was closing in. At that moment, Camilla immediately sensed the danger and shouted for everyone to prepare for an imminent fight. Wim clenched his collar, his face setting into a determined expression. From the shadows above, a terrifying winged demon descended, its skull-like head covered with multiple eyes that twitched unpredictably. The creature's unsettling gaze snapped toward the group as it emitted a guttural growl. Hovering near the high arch of the dungeon, it screeched viciously, unleashing fury upon the brave adventurers standing firm below. The demon gathered energy in its maw, preparing to unleash a devastating breath attack. The shield unit surged forward, forming a blockade while shouting a battle cry, bracing for impact. A massive sphere of magical fire erupted from the creature's mouth, rushing towards the defensive line. The flames collided with enchanted shields, enveloping the front line in blinding light. To everyone's shock, the attack was not merely blocked but deflected back violently toward the demon. The beast shrieked in agony as its own inferno rebounded, striking it and forcing it to collide with the ground. Onlookers gasped in astonishment, shouting that the shield unit had executed an advanced reflection technique, an impressive display of skill and coordination. Behind his shield, Mark gazed blankly at the horizon, sweat trickling down his face in silent shock. Turning to his comrades, his voice trembled as he asked whether they had truly managed a reflection technique for the very first time. The other knights nodded in awe, marveling if what they had achieved was merely a miracle. Mark's eyes lingered in the distance, twisted into a faint smile that refused to accept that an ordinary buff could unlock such an extraordinary feat. Camilla barked the command to fire, urging her long-range units to unleash their assault without delay. A torrent of arrows and magical spells poured down upon the wyvern, creating a dazzling storm of violence. A mage chanted the incantation for Jupiter's spear, loosing a colossal bolt of lightning that hammered the beast. Yet, when the smoke cleared, the creature, a monster named Guji, remained unharmed, uttering a mocking growl. Camilla observed the scene with cold precision, noting that their attacks had failed to even scratch its scales. She spotted the distinctive glow in its eyes and the special anti-magic coating that rendered its armor immune to spells. She concluded that they faced a rare subspecies of wyvern, one resistant to conventional magic. Wim watched in silence, unsure how to confront such an invulnerable foe. Raising her hand, Camilla signaled her allies to withdraw and give the battlefield space. With a confident smirk, she announced that it was finally her moment to act. Her cape fluttered as she stepped forward, emanating an overwhelming presence of authority and power. Hyde Mary expressed a reassuring smile and told Camilla she trusted her to handle the rest of the fight. Camilla's mind drifted back to the astonishing reflection maneuver executed earlier by the shield unit. She marveled at how 5 individuals had synchronized to perform such a complex technique flawlessly. An eager curiosity stirred within her as she realized the untapped potential of Wim's magic. She wondered what kind of monster she could become if that same buff were applied to herself. The thrill of the unknown brought a smile to her face, imagining herself surpassing her physical limits. Turning to the rookie, she called out, "Vim boy!" to grab his attention. Wim hesitantly approached, asking if she needed him to cast a buff for the upcoming battle. Camila demanded he use every offensive spell at his disposal. After a moment of calculation, Wim suggested that a threefold increase was the safest limit. Camila narrowed her eyes, accusing him of playing it too cautious, and urging him to push further. Panic rose within Wim as he considered the risk. Boosting her strength 10 times could be catastrophic. He desperately tried to argue that such an increase would be suicidal, but Camila refused to listen. Beads of sweat formed on his brow as he realized she was serious about this reckless demand. He sheepishly admitted that, in theory, such a power boost was possible, though it would likely be fatal. His words sealed his fate, acknowledging the danger but unable to dissuade her from pursuing this dangerous course. Mary flashes a malicious grin, casually expressing her anticipation to observe the impending outcome. Wim stands trembling before the leader, compelled to cast the most perilous buff of his life. With intense focus, he channels his magic, his hand glowing as he begins executing a complex spell sequence. A shimmering digital grid materializes over Kama's silhouette as the spell analysis swiftly examines her entire physical form. Wim marvels at her biology, quietly questioning whether she remains truly human, while admiring her remarkable muscle and bone density. His mind races through intricate calculations, pinpointing fulcrums and centers of gravity to refine the magical enhancement for maximum impact and minimal risk. He concludes his strategy, casting Bowen to reinforce even the tiniest parts of her body. The enchantment settles over Kama, her eyes widening as immense power surges through her veins. A confident smirk crosses the leader's face as she senses the overwhelming strength flowing through her enhanced physique. Drawing her enormous blade, she challenges the beast, summoning the name of her weapon, the Great Executioner. Camila stands unflinching amidst the dust and wreckage, her gaze fixed on the terrifying wyvern, unmoved by fear. She launches forward with incredible speed, sword poised to strike a decisive blow. Narrowing her eyes in concentration, she activates her signature multiplication skill, amplifying her attack. A colossal blade of pure energy erupts from her sword, tearing through the air with enough force to split the sky itself. The group of adventurers remains frozen in awe, their eyes fixed on the awe-inspiring spectacle unfolding before them. Murmurs of wonder spread among witnesses, marveling at the legendary power of the Great Executioner's sword. Seasoned veterans gape in disbelief, noting that her multiplication skill has rarely manifested in such a colossal form. Taunting the enormous wyvern as a mere bird, Camila prepares to deliver her final judgment. The silent crowd holds their breath, unable to comprehend the devastation about to be unleashed. With a thunderous roar, her blade strikes the creature's skull, producing a shockwave that reverberates through the entire dungeon. Wim and the shield unit stand speechless, stunned by the unexpectedly swift one-hit kill. Camila closes her eyes briefly, exhaling with a look of exhilaration, basking in the aftermath of victory. Breathless, she laughs, overwhelmed by the adrenaline-fueled euphoria of her victory. An entire party erupts into cheers, raising their weapons in celebration of their leader's triumph. Wim rushes forward anxiously, asking if she feels any pain or discomfort. Camila gazes down at him, her expression softening with concern. She takes his hands, smiling brightly, and assures him that his buff was extraordinary, and she feels perfectly fine. Wim sighed deeply, admitting that he had been petrified due to a mere 5% chance of side effects. Camila tilted her head in perplexity, questioning whether such a small risk was truly the source of his fears. She looked at him with a blank expression while he explained that, in the worst-case scenario, the effect could have led to a muscle tear. He insisted that muscle tears were excruciatingly painful, but Camila only regarded his concern with mild amusement, as if he had joked about a mere paper cut. He pressed on, inquiring about potential bodily disturbances, completely missing the fact that she considered such injuries insignificant. Suddenly, Camila threw her head back and erupted into loud, uncontrollable laughter at his naivety. She looked down at the confused recruit with a broad smile, instantly realizing that Wim Strauss was an extraordinarily intriguing man. Her mind reviewed his credentials, recognizing his expertise in navigating labyrinths, search capabilities, and granted powers as all top-tier. With a gaze filled with fierce intent, she silently decided that his past was irrelevant. What mattered was that she wanted him for herself. Lil, in confusion, watched as her manic laughter continued, unsure why she was reacting so oddly. Nervously, he began to sweat, wondering if her strange behavior might be a side effect of his buff affecting her mind.